Hi, it's Michael Kerr here, presenting Small Business Banter. A healthy micro and small business sector means a successful economy and a more vibrant society. Small Business Banter is about helping regional business owners better prepare for current challenges, but also for the next stage of business success. I'm Michael Kerr, founder of Kerr Capital, advisors to business owners. Each week, I interview a fellow small business owner or an expert, and they share their stories, their lived experiences, the wins and the losses, and their best advice to help you, the listener, get the most you can from your own business. Small Business Banter is brought to you from the studios of 104.7 Gippsland FM and is heard across Australia on the Community Radio Network. And thanks also to Kerr Capital, supporters of the show. On today's episode, I'm really happy to welcome in Rodger Spencer, who is a client and a friend of mine. We worked together quite a few years. Rodger sold his business, Ace Answering, in December last year. Welcome in, Rodger. Good to have you in. Look, just to set things up, can you just give us a little bit about your personal, professional background leading up to buying that business, Ace Answering, in the early 2000s, I think it was. But if you could just give us a bit of a snapshot of your time professionally and in business up to and including Ace Answering.
Well, professional background is structural engineering, cost engineering, estimating, and project management in the oil and gas offshore production facilities, and then further on in defence frigates and submarines. So that's my background, mainly in all over the world, in Korea, in the UK, the Middle East, Singapore, and Indonesia, and 9 years in the Middle East. So that's the sort of background that I come from.
You covered some territory, yeah.
It's going into and then ending up in buying my own business.
So you came back to Australia was it the early 2000s?
No, I was in Australia in 1989.
Oh, okay.
I came to Australia and started off in Sydney.
Yeah.
As the estimating manager of the frigate program, the 12 frigate program, You may recall at that time.
Yeah.
So I was a couple of years on that. And then I was asked to go on to the submarines in Adelaide as the cost scheduling director.
Okay. So then you've ended up buying an existing call centre business. So
yes, that's right. Now that was further on down the road. That happened in about 2001, and I think the main reason for that was really I was at a loose end at that particular time, and that business came up and I took it because it was local, really.
But with no particular experience in call centres before that?
None at all, no.
And by the way, the Ace Answering was an inbound call centre, right? So you had clients who, and you take calls on their behalf. So that's just to, kind of frame up what kind of call centre we're talking about. It was all everybody that worked in the business was local, and you had, I got to know a lot about the business. Was it a choice of go back and do more of that engineering kind of work, or was there a particular reason why you wanted to get into a small business?
Well, I think it was really it was a turning point, really. I'd reached that point where I had to have a break from the intensity of what my previous jobs entailed, and I thought the only way was to get out of it completely and start again.
Right. And you saw a business that was local to where you lived. Was it advertised in the paper or something? What? How did?
Yeah, I was looking around for quite some time actually, and yes, this one came up through a broker, and it happened to be local. So in the end, it was a no-brainer, really. It's only 5 minutes from home, so I thought that was a good idea.
But I'm assuming the economic fundamentals of it were okay as well, because it remained a very good business right through until, well, still is. But you and I worked together for many years to sell that business, which we did in December last year, December 2020.
It saw quite a lot of it saw good organic growth, really. That business started off as a nursing agency, a local nursing agency. It happened to be a 24/7 service, which I really wasn't prepared for. It didn't really know a lot about the industry when I went into it. Over the years, we built it up step by step. We got a lot more customers, but it was still hand to mouth, for about 4 or 5 years after that.
Yeah, had you underestimated the complexity or the challenges of running a small business? I mean, you sound like you were rebounding and didn't want to go into that intensive corporate big business.
That's right. No, that's right. No, I thought running a business would be easy. My own business would be easy.
Right.
And that didn't work out too well. But anyway, I soon discovered that it was hands-on and I had to do everything myself. And if I didn't do it, then it wouldn't happen. So there was a lot of new things to think about. There was staff and staff salaries and paying staff and
getting customers and
getting
training.
And then there was the customer side of it and the customer complaint side of it, and all these things sort of suddenly hit me.
Sounds like that classic. You went from one hot pot to another hot pot. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but you settled it after. It sounded like you settled into something of a rhythm or a more level business after a few years. But it must have been pretty intensive those first few years.
Yes, we did actually, but I bought that business when the internet was hardly up, and some people just didn't have the internet. And our IT was just terrible. We didn't even have a server, really. So there was a lot of development in IT when I took over, to get us up to scratch. But really, that didn't take off until we moved premises.
Right.
And then we really got stuck into it. Bought new computers, servers, and new operating systems.
Yeah. So I guess, and you bought it 2001. We roll forward. You and I met. I think it was at an exit planning seminar in about 2014 that I spoke at Vecchi.
Yes.
Yeah. And so this podcast is about owners and their experience with exiting or selling their business. So. You'd been in it for, call it 12, 13, 14 years. And what was at around about 2013, 2014, you decided it was time to sell the business. What was it to retire? Was it to do something different? Can you talk me through what your thought process was, when you had that first initial thoughts about selling the business?
Yes, I think, going back to 2014, I think I felt that it was probably about time I started thinking about what I needed to do to make the business suitable for selling, and so I started on that journey. So it was a whole combination of things really that I needed to start looking at, and indeed a part of that was getting in consultants to actually help me and direct me, to increase a customer base as well. It was a journey that I had to take, and I think I was thinking at the time that I probably, I'm in no hurry to sell because we're improving the business every day anyway. But I needed to start the process as early as possible, really, and see where it led.
Yeah. So the consultants you employed, were they sales and marketing, was it, IT, to try to...
No, sales and marketing, in the main, really. But they also looked at the way we were, conducting the work in the systems. But mainly it was just, it was sales and marketing. And that's where I had some big issues because they wanted me to spend a lot more money without looking at too much about the systems, as a part of that process, as a critical part of that process of improving, holistically the whole business. Yeah.
So did you feel like the business was static in the sense that it'd be more attractive to a buyer if you could show them some strong growth?
Yes, exactly. I mean, you can't. You've got to keep improving the business. Otherwise you're going backwards. And part of that process was to ensure that we had improvements, and we're improving all the time. One of the big stumbling blocks in our sort of industry was to get entry into long-term work, and you've got to break into that to expand. But you're at the point with small business that to break into that bigger area, there are a lot of barriers in terms of qualifications.
Being preferred tenderers or preferred providers. Yeah.
ISO, assurance, quality control, all this comes into it. And
so it's not a simple case of we'll go and increase revenue by 20% next year. I mean, it's I think you're saying that there was some of that long-term contract work. I'm presuming that's with things, organisations like local councils and
correct.
Professional associations. So you're only going to get those if if you've got certifications like ISO and
correct.
Yeah. Okay. So
that's a journey in itself.
But you assessed that the business was doing okay, but to make it easier to sell and perhaps more valuable, that it needed you needed to see an upward tick and a growth trend in sales. So that's what you said about doing. So that was 2013, 2014. You, I think by your own admission, you had been more of a backroom operator. Is that, so that's why you were comfortable running the business, not a natural salesperson or a natural business developer?
Correct, yeah.
Excuse me. So then you saw that as a way to make the business more attractive. But in no hurry at that time. You were doing a form of exit planning, really, weren't you? You were saying, you know the business well, but to make it easier to sell, we need to change some things. So that's what was the prompt to get some sales marketing expertise in.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Okay, so what happened from there? 2014, or we met. We had some discussions about, so you let me in on your plan to sell, that you weren't in a hurry. So a couple of years went by before you actually decided it was time to really go, formally into a sale process. So is that so? It's about 2016. You decided then it was about the time then to really get cracking on a sale.
Yes, I think it was around about that time, and that was an interesting process just to begin that process, because it made me look at more deeply at some of the things that we were doing, and the systems and the procedures need to be brought up to date and everything. So that was sort of phase 2 of the journey, if you like, because we had to get our own house in order to make the business presentable for selling. So that, from 2016, that's we started on that on the first phase of that journey, I suppose.
But were you following a formal exit plan of some kind, or was it just your intuition that these things needed to be done?
I think you provided me with some guidelines, actually, which I used. I used as a guide because it prompted me to think, well, there is some aspects that I need to be, brought up to date if I'm going to, sell this business. So, that was helpful.
Yeah. Okay. So right. So then, how were you personally feeling at around about 2016? Did you feel like I've been in the business 15? It really is time to move on. And what were your expectations about how long it might take to sell from there?
I didn't expect it would take as long as it did, but
which is about as you and I have chatted about, it was about 4 years since we started it, and certainly 2020 was an unusual year, and that probably genuinely extended it by 9 to 12 months, and we put that down to a one-off.
Yeah, exactly.
But it was certainly still,
Yeah. Look, I had no sort of expectations how soon I would actually do a sale. So I had, really, we kept working and we kept improving and we kept on getting more customers. And it was just, it was a process, I guess, that you had to go through. But it really, looking back, it was quite surprising that it took so long for anyone to actually take a more intense interest in the business. But that's just the way it is, I suppose.
Look, it's a theme through this podcast and the guests that I've had on to date, and the work I've done over 19 years now. It takes a lot longer than everybody thinks, and it's so this is the reason we have these discussions, is to prompt people to to think about it earlier and action it earlier, but even during that time you owned the business, you had several approaches from potential buyers over the journey, didn't you? Who expressed interest?
Yeah.
That ultimately went nowhere.
Yes, I think people from outside the industry and not understanding what the industry is all about. I think a lot of those people, there wasn't that many of them, but the people that did make inquiries had no clue on the industry at all. So those people really just went by the wayside when they looked into what we did and how we did it. And I was always worried about my customer base. How would those people look after our customers? There's particular systems that we use and training that we go through because it's looking after your customer, but you're looking after the callers of the customer, if you know what I mean.
Mm.
And
your customer's customer.
Yeah, your customer's customer. And it to those initial inquiries fell by the wayside because they suddenly realised it was more complex than they originally thought.
Yeah, and look, this happens a lot, and it's I love that people want to get out there and buy a small business. You did that to start the whole process, but there's a lot of owners I know get a lot of approaches, and it can be it can be exciting that you're having a pretty crook week and somebody expresses interest, but you can chew up a lot of time trying to convince someone or educate them about your industry. And in the end, we sold this business within your industry, and that made it. There were a different set of challenges, but you and I both formed a view that the buyer had a good reason to buy your business, understood the industry, and so it was more about, I guess, value and some of the operational things, than trying to explain why the call center industry in Australia for inbound is a good opportunity. So I think that's one of the key takeouts when, the selling process for anybody. There are some businesses that can appeal to a wide range of buyers, but there's a lot that are, in the end, an accounting practice is going to sell to another accountant, and that's a pretty obvious one. But call centers, there's a lot of, you need a lot of. You took you years to get on top of that, so you need industry experience, or it's incredibly helpful. And so when you're selling your business, to be spending time educating people about the industry, I really question that as the value of that investment of time and effort. So we kicked off the sale process. It took us about 4 years. We had, we did the normal things. We did promote it, but not widely in the on those business for sale sites, because for the reasons we've just talked about. You can attract a lot of people that or interested parties that just aren't ultimately going to buy. So we targeted players that we knew about in your industry. So we had quite a few discussions with industry players, and one of them bought it. Do you want to just talk about, from your perspective, it was a long 3 to 4. It was a 4-year process. How are you feeling at the start of that, during that, by the end of that?
Well, I think the main reason really for having employing a broker is so you can get on with your work. Because the broker, when you start getting into negotiations, you don't want to really be doing that yourself. And you've got a business to run and to maintain, so you just really don't have the time. So it's important that you have that support and that interface, especially that interface with lawyers from both sides of the camp.
Yeah, that's in the later stages when you get offers or you're in serious negotiation.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. With the as we often talked about, I've invested time and you've paid me to understand your business. You go back. The best thing you can do is run your business and not let it fall away because you think a sale might be happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's a no-brainer, really. You got to continue with the business and let the sales process carry on, and that interface is very valuable in the whole process. But I wasn't leading the sales process; you guys were leading the sales process, really, and then interfacing with me when you needed information. So it was good. It worked well.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about some of the? It did work well. We got there. How it impacted you personally through the ups and downs of we got close with a couple of potential buyers, but is it draining? Is it?
Yeah, look, you have to take the attitude really to just, well, if it happens, it happens. It'll be great, but if it doesn't happen, we just got to keep going anyway. So I had that. I never got too excited about people coming along and showing an interest. That's fine, but it was good that there was interest, and that was helpful for morale. But I don't think it was draining really in that respect when there were disappointments, because I knew somebody else would come along anyway. So you just carry on. You got to stay positive. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I think you remained also very commercially pragmatic along the way, because you do go through some near misses, and anyway, well, look, we got there in the end. So I wanted to, if you've already offered a couple of really interesting insights for other owners that might be considering about selling, but how would you kind of summarise what you think were the hardest parts of the process that you might even do differently if you were doing it again?
Really, the hardest part of the process, I guess, were there any hard parts? They're all hard parts.
I thought there were. Yeah, if we break it down, there was, there's a constant need for information, explaining how, you have these, over a 4-year period, you get ups and downs in the business, right? And sometimes you don't control those. Sometimes, so, explaining to someone that's quite interested that revenue was down last month for, by 10%. It's a one-off thing, and
explaining those the cycle, the business cycle, which is something that you learn over time, and every business knows, every businessman owner knows the cycle, either the monthly cycle or the annual cycle or the biannual cycle, where he can see when business and predict when business is going to pick up over the year. I mean, for us, it started when we got all the customers. It was it started in October through to February, March, April of the next year. So that was our busiest time when we took on new customers.
So there was an inherent cycle, and so just prior to that, it might have been a bit flat traditionally or annually, and so they're the sort of things that you've got to be able to explain easily.
That's right. And the other element was it calls and call volume. Call volume, although predictable on a monthly basis, also has trends towards certain times. Like there's an uplift on Thursdays and Fridays and Mondays, and then it troughs, and then it's up again before public holidays and after public holidays, and then it goes down again until you get a big storm, and then
it goes crazy.
Our volume goes up again. So all these things need to be understood, and you're not to panic when your revenue goes down in a particular month because nothing much is happening out there, because you know that cycle's going to turn.
Yeah, I mean, you came from that background where you had to be very measured, so it comes across strongly that you have that ability to stand back and be logical and rational. But what about with dealing with staff? One of the hardest things I see in most sales is that the owner. You talked about caring for your customers and your customers. And I know you did, and I know you also cared a lot about your staff. So how, as you got further into the sale process, did that present some challenges about how and when you might communicate that you were thinking about selling, or you were getting close to selling to key staff and key customers who are obviously a very big part of the value of the business?
Yeah, look, it was critical not to divulge to staff until you're ready to do that. Otherwise, you get all sorts of. It just upsets the rhythm of the office, and you get unnecessary upheaval. So you don't really want to be divulging that you're thinking of selling the business and it doesn't sell, and it's on the cards for the staff, because you start getting turnover, and it's unsettling for everyone. So you've got to keep that commercial in confidence, or confidential, really, to yourself until
you're ready, which I take to mean that it's when you're quite clear as the owner that something is going to happen. Is that what you meant?
Yeah.
So what about with because when a business, your business, we sold it for a reasonably good value, but what the buyer was buying really was a bit of equipment, but it's your customer base and your brand and your some of your key staff. So what about with customers? Did you do anything special to like you did with staff to tell them, communicate that the business is going to is sold or it's about to be sold?
Look, from 2016, I decided to endeavour to separate myself from direct links with the customer, and put that over to staff. So it was a strategy to not reply using my email address, and have staff take over more responsibility for that communication. That was a slow process, but it definitely worked. So by the end of the time, there was next to no direct communications between, unless it was a disaster or something really difficult happened, I stayed out of the picture.
Right.
And I think that was a pretty good strategy. The other aspect of it was that the new owner taking over was taking over as Ace Answering. The same company business name wasn't going to change. So there was, no reason to be communicating to the customers that that suddenly, I had disappeared over the horizon, which, they wouldn't even know I was there really, because I'd trained the staff over that period of time to ensure that, unless it was really urgent, you need to handle it, right?
Yeah.
And it worked well.
Yeah, you trusted in your staff. I think. Look, there's two key points there. The first one is removing yourself as the owner from the day-to-day operations, and particularly that in your business, the customer interface was a really, it's near the top of everything that an owner should try to do. It doesn't work in every industry, but you did that really well. And it takes you need to be confident in your staff, but certainly then a buyer can look at it and know that the customers are buying. They're just happy with their service. It's not a direct cozy relationship with the owner. It's just they're paying for a good service and they'll continue to pay for a good service. Because it's and you're not critical to it as the owner. The second bit, which does confuse a lot of people, I'm not going to give any legal or tax advice, but in your case, we did what was called a company sale as opposed to an asset sale.
Mm.
And what you were saying there was we sold the company, and therefore those customer contracts were with your company, and so really there wasn't
no change.
It was just business as usual. Very different if you sell the business assets, and you've got to bring in a new company. That's when and it gets done, and more than. Well, a lot of business sales are sales of business assets, and but it brings a whole lot of other complication at the time of transfer of the business. So, you did, removed yourself from the day-to-day interface, and also, in this case, made it a bit easier by doing a company sale.
Yeah.
We got it there. It was actually quite a, we went through that whole due diligence process, but. It was the business. You did a great job of, keeping your foot on the accelerator, and so there wasn't, and also, I think largely we're able to, maintain this aura or sense that if it didn't sell, you're going to keep running it, and that's a very, it's one of the things I encourage. These sales processes are long and winding and unpredictable, and the more you appear to be desperate to sell, the outcome, the worse the outcome.
And I think it would affect you personally too. So, it's business as usual, really, and you take the whole process on board, but you still got to run your business, and it's still got to be viable at the end of the day. So it's no use doing anything untoward, just because you think you're going to sell it, because you may not.
Yeah. So look, we talked about, this is really it was a 4-year process, and there are other business. I've sold a business in 2 weeks, and I've sold many that have taken 2, 3, 4 years. So it's not unusual at all, but we'd probably added a year because of COVID. And so let's say...
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Let's say for the sake of the exercise, it might have been 3. But, for anybody who's considering selling, and it's 3 for the formal, process of, going to market and selling. But as you talked about, at least a couple of years of thinking about, how you might make the business more saleable and more valuable. So then in your case, you were able to exit pretty quickly after we sold it. So it's sort of, it's a 5 to 6 year package really. But, sometimes and often actually owners will need to hang around for a bit longer than you did. So let's talk about, we got the deal completed in, I think it was early December, let's call it that. So you'd been running your business, active in it, busy, enjoying it for, a good 18 or 19 years really by the end. But so how did you feel when the deal finally got done, and then now it's a couple of months since? How do you, so thoughts about how you felt just after the deal got done finally, and then then and 2 months on?
Yeah, look, pretty good really. However, there's still loose ends, which have got to be, and there are accounting loose ends.
Yep.
In the main, and it's you think you're sort of being let out of jail type of thing, or released from all the day-to-day tensions, but you still have things in the background which have got to be fixed up, and I'm sure they will. It just takes time, and so there's final tax outcomes and final position of me when I left.
That's one of the things. I guess it's a corollary for making it easy to actually sell and transition the business because you did a company sale. One of the things that not the downsides, but the added extras are that there's a lot more of that accounting work and due diligence, and so that's but it certainly made it easier to get the deal done. So, but personally, how would you describe when we the money was paid, the deal was done? How did you feel personally? Relieved, excited, not sure?
Well, it certainly is a turning point, and I'm wondering what the hell I'm going to do next. Because I really haven't given it much thought, except maybe I'll just travel around Australia and see the sights. I think that's one of the things I want to do. But in the meantime, I've got bugger all to do, really. Go down and have a coffee every day and weed the garden.
Right. So there's a bit of a void.
Yeah, so the garden's looking pretty good.
But how many days? Yeah.
The weeds are not getting a chance.
Yeah.
So yeah,
you're right over the top of them.
Yeah.
I mean, before you or while you were thinking about and selling and then actually planning to sell, did you have was it clear what you were going to do once you sold, or was it more a case of let's get it sold, then I'll think about it?
Yeah, exactly. Because I had no great plans, really. It's just that really it was time to move on, because a lot of things had changed in an overall sense, how business is conducted these days. And two, I'm dealing with my customers with it's a different era for these young customers coming up these days, and it's all IT based, and it's all lovey-dovey, friendly type sort of interface. It's totally different sort of communication that goes on. And trying to communicate at my age with the younger generation in business is bloody hard.
Yeah.
Because they obviously have some preconceived ideas about you, and which are not there at all, because all you want to do is, have a good relationship with the customer. But there is that hanging around too long doesn't do you any good.
Right.
For sure. And I think that was one of the main catalysts, I think, for me wanting to move on. It's just I couldn't relate to some of these people.
Yeah. Okay. So, but yeah. So that does that mean you might give yourself some more time, but might not rule going out into some other venture, because you've got a lot of experience. I mean, and particularly you worked in major projects, infrastructure, type capital, large capital projects. You went and did something that more and more people are going to look at doing, which is leaving corporate and buying their own small business, because it, notionally gives them a bit more flexibility. And as you've found out, it's not as easy. That shouldn't discourage anybody from considering doing it. And in fact, it might be more necessary, with the way corporate behaves these days. It's getting harder and harder to be plan long term in a lot of those places. So an independent small business might be a good answer.
Corporate business these days is so intense. It's intense because there's legalities now covering everything, from everything that you do, and you've got to have the expertise to do that. So, you need your accountants, you need your lawyers, and you can't hardly make a move without these people these days. And it becomes stifling, really, running businesses. So I can see where people have had enough and want to get out and do their own thing. However, it's not as easy as it used to be, for sure, because all those intensive legalities of running staff, for one thing. I mean,
that your headache
the labour laws now is just ridiculous. And especially running a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week business, it really, took its toll on. Well, we couldn't even understand the industrial labour law, really. I thought, well, I'll get on top of this, because I used to, write contracts in the Middle East. And I thought, if I can do that, I should be able to do this,
Yeah.
But, so I got on the list of getting a monthly sort of legal help and industrial. So it was a lawyer manual, which was really thick, in a couple of 100 pages, just in my industry, of the local labour law for call centre operators. And I took a look at this, and it was like, how can I understand this? This is ridiculous. I didn't have the time to actually dedicate myself to understanding. I thought I could flip a couple of pages and really understand what was going on, but it was absolutely too complex.
Yeah.
And on top of that, every month you'd get updates which you had to insert. So how do these people keep up with all the, changes in legislation, which is happening all the time? You can't do it on a small business level. You just can't do it.
No, it is. And you're wanting to do the right thing, which most of them are. And it's, I know the I know the pain you went through trying to ensure
Well, just look at those restaurant owners underpaying their staff. They wouldn't have a bloody clue what was going on. No one does.
Yeah.
Until until it happens, and then somebody digs down into some unknown legislation and says, "Well, you haven't been paying them the right amount of money."
Yeah, like it takes its toll, and as you began this sort of little discussion, it was you figured it was your time to move on. You didn't want to go stale, didn't want to, and so I think that's a healthy position to leave a business in when the owner is not so integral and dependent on the business that they can. They can see that. There's a bit of clarity that, it's time for somebody else. And so, I think notwithstanding the challenges you went through in buying, would you be encouraging others to think about, with eyes open, buying a business as a, something as an alternative to staying in a job that they don't like?
Well, I think it's it certainly has its advantages. You're your own boss for a start, and this is quite a change. At the same time, you've got to make your own decisions. They've got to be good decisions at the end of the day, because your business relies on the decisions that you're going to make. I think there's a lot of freedom for that, and people, especially for those with the inclination of getting out of, the corporate world because they're stifled in terms of, because they have particular talents which are either not being seen in the industry that they're in, or they're, sick and tired of the politics, so on and so forth. So I think that was another big factor for me getting out, really, was the politics was just unbearable. I used to try and play the straight game. In fact, there's so much politics and going on in big corporations these days that it's almost impossible.
Yeah, so you basically created your own political party of, called your own business. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Good way of looking at it, actually.
Yeah. Look, been a great chat, Rodger. I'd like to close with any sort of top of mind thoughts you have for other owners wanting to, thinking about selling. And I know that there's a lot of owners that are at an age where they are thinking about it. What's your top tip for them if they know deep down they're really not addressing the £800 gorilla?
Yeah. It's a step-by-step process. Really, start early thinking about it, which we did, and putting things in place to make your business more attractive, and start doing that. Continue running your business, continue taking on new customers, and really making sure that you clean up all your business systems and procedures as you're going along, to make it more attractive for somebody else to take over.
Yeah. So and embedded in that is is getting independent help, right? So you clearly can't do that all yourself.
Look, it would be impossible to do it yourself. In fact, almost foolish to do it yourself, I think, because you can leave money on the table, but apart from that, all the process that you have to go through, the legalities, and also the interface between you and the prospective buyer shouldn't always be direct. I think initially, anyway, it needs to go through another party. because you really don't have time, and you'll make the wrong decisions and say the wrong things because you've got to run your business. You've got to keep running your business while this is going.
Yeah, and it's a fallacy to think because you know your business, that it means you can necessarily be the best person to sell that business and prepare it. It's
oh no, well that's a good point. Yeah, absolutely. Because you have such a vested interest, and you're tied up with the emotional side of the business that you wouldn't be the right person to actually execute a sale.
Yeah,
not in my mind, anyway.
Yeah. Anything else as parting words of wisdom for potential, for existing owners thinking about selling, or have you covered it?
Well, I think they should do it earlier rather than later. I think I probably left it too late or later, but they should think about it earlier if they can. But it all comes down to finances, doesn't it? And really, that guides when you need to do it and when you should be doing it.
Yeah. But don't be shy about investing in the process. Rodger, thank you so much. I think the only other thing I wanted to mention was this. You've been busy and active, and you're doing some gardening. I hope you find yourself in doing some work with perhaps other small business owners, because you've got a lot of experience, no nonsense, practical experience, help running your own business and exiting, and so I think once you get through that, there is a void, and I'm fascinated by how owners deal with that, because it's such a step change in their life. But I'd encourage you to. We're going to have that celebratory lunch at some point. COVID, allowing, but I reckon there's some things there that we ought to talk about, because there's a lot of experience you could bring. Thank you again, Rodger, for your time.
No, you're welcome.
Very much appreciated. So that's all for today's episode of Small Business Banter. I continue to be inspired, bringing you small business experts and other small business owners and hearing their stories. If you want to listen to any past episode, jump onto your podcast platform of choice and search Small Business Banter. There you will find a diverse and fascinating collection of small business owners and experts openly discussing and sharing their experiences. For any of the links, resources, or information we've talked about on the show today, or to contact me, please head over to smallbusinessbanter.com, or you can find us on Facebook and Instagram. And it would be great to have you tune in the same time next week for another episode of Small Business Banter.